Hi everyone, this is my first video, so please bear with me while there may be some mistakes in here. Thank you. Please enjoy. This happened about 20 years ago. I was 9 years old at the time, but my parents have also told me their side of the story on a bunch of different occasions, so that should help. My parents are both biologists. They met at work, and from there it was history. The place where they worked at the time was a government building dedicated to biology research using government projects turned towards the public, meaning they were the ones studying the environment and making environmental protection laws around their studies. This was a massive old government building. It always had a security guard present, day and night. During the day, these guards would mostly just stay at reception and greet people. But at night, they would do the rounds and make sure there were no intruders because of all the science equipment and computers kept in the building. One of these guards is the "let's not meet" guy. Initially, he seemed like the nicest person. He was really nice to me, and frankly, all the memories I have from him before this were really nice. He would greet me and talk to me in the nicest way every time my parents brought me to work. He would make me paper planes, which he was surprisingly good at, and throw them around with me. He would stay with me at reception in the days that my parents had to work into the night. Obviously for me, that would get really boring, really fast. So he would keep me company and entertain me. Mostly, we would talk and play with paper airplanes and watch TV. It all seemed nice enough. Nice enough for my parents to trust him with me, which was probably their biggest mistake. One night, my parents had to work even later than usual. I think it was around 10 p.m. and they were still at it. So this guy, who was on the night shift, decided to take me around the building with him to do his rounds. We started on the top floor, checking all the rooms in the exterior part of the roof. Every room was so dark that I'd always stay a little behind and wait for him to turn the lights on. Then we stepped down to the second floor where my parents' office and labs were. We checked the opposite side of the building, going into labs with massive extractors, microscopes, and every kind of science equipment you might think of. We walked down the stairs to the first floor, where most of the administration rooms were. I remember seeing some maps on the walls of embalmed fish everywhere serving as decorations. The first floor was all clear, so it was time to check the 2 basement levels. I thought it would have made sense to check the labs on the right side first, as the left side had a flight of stairs at the end leading up to where my parents were. But for some reason, he decided to go back to that side first. We checked all the labs, but I noticed his pace was accelerating, and he was starting to look super happy, excited even. Once again, we checked all the labs, all the corners from one end to the other, turning the lights on ahead of us and then turning them off behind us when we left. We got to the last area. He turned all the lights on and we went inside. There were 3 separate offices on each side of the lab, and on the first one, he hurried towards the printer, opened it up, took out 2 pieces of paper, and made 2 quick paper airplanes. That's when everything changed. He picked up one of the planes, went outside of the office, and threw it towards the end of the room. Then, he told me the one that he just threw was mine, and that we could throw them around in here. I ran to the other side of the room to pick up my plane, excited to play with it. And suddenly the lights went off. I turned around to check what was happening. I saw him getting out of the lab, turning the lights off and locking the door. I ran to the door, punched it, and kicked it while screaming for him to open, panic taking over me because of how scared I was of the dark at the time. Through the glass door, I could see him scurrying away in the corridors, turning the lights off as he went, disappearing around the corner. I'm pretty sure that everything I felt, and every shadow and creepy monster I saw in there while waiting was part of my imagination, because of how scared I was. I balled up against a corner and could see shadows moving around me in the dark. I could only cry without knowing what was happening and why he was doing that. My parents finished work eventually, and when they did, they packed up their things and made their way to the lobby to pick me up and go home. When they got there, the security guard was at reception, but I was nowhere to be found. They panicked, of course. Must have shouted a couple hundred different cuss words at the guy, and I'm not sure how my dad didn't murder him right then and there. But when they asked the guy where the hell I was and what he had done with me, he simply said that he had gone to do his rounds with me and I must have gotten lost somewhere. This is a building that would take you an hour and a half to check from top to bottom, even if you were rushing, so must have gotten lost somewhere is not exactly helpful. They looked for hours without finding me. It was only when I saw a light far at the end of the corridors leading to the lab I was in that I got the courage to stand up, rush towards the door, and start punching it as hard as I could. They finally found me there and made the guard unlock the door to get me out. I don't really remember sleeping that night, and if I did, it must have been out of exhaustion. But I know I made my mom stay in the bedroom with me the entire night. Of course, my parents made a complaint against the guard, and when they did, the guy started being investigated. he was fired and arrested. Not because of locking me away where he probably hoped no one would find me, but because he'd been partnering up with other criminals to steal computers and equipment from the building to sell in some shady market along with the information in the hard drives and make money off of it. By then, he had stolen a lot of old computers without anyone realizing it, and who knows what his plans were for me that night. I'm not convinced that locking a crying child in the middle of the darkness hidden away in some room is exactly the most normal behavior if you're not trying to hide them and come get them later when everyone left and sell them as part of your product. Luckily, he never had the chance to do that, and I really hope he never got to do it to any other kid. So this happened a couple days ago. I live in the suburbs of Northern California with my parents in an upper middle class neighborhood. My parents are away for their anniversary, so I've had the place to myself for the week. I got home from a late shift around 1 a.m. I go inside, shower, then I head to the kitchen to make some buffalo wings for dinner. I crack open a beer and sit in front of the TV. I was sifting through movies on HBO Max when all of a sudden the doorbell rings. It actually startled me, to the point that I jumped off the couch, knocking my beer over in the process. It's now 2 a.m., and there was no good reason for anybody to be at my door this hour. I just stared in the direction of the front door for several seconds before it rang again, followed by rapid knocking on the door and window. Now, for whatever reason, I was no longer scared, but more annoyed at the fact that some idiot would think it's appropriate to be banging on someone's front door. I head over to the front door, unlock the deadbolt, and pull the front door open, leaving the chain in place. In the heat of the moment, I did not think to look out the window first. I just yanked the door open. Standing on my porch was a woman around mid-20s with long, silky black hair and a purple hoodie and black pants. I said, "Can I help you?" To which she replied, "Yeah, I'm sorry to bother you so late, but my boyfriend and I are having some car trouble, and our phones are dead. We were wondering if you could possibly let us use yours." She pointed up the street to a dark-colored sedan parked underneath the street lamp and said, "See, that's us right there." Now, had this been any other person, I would have said no, but she truly looked innocent. Like, she was a college student. I live in a college town, and it wasn't uncommon for college kids to be out late on a Friday night. I asked her where her boyfriend was, and she said that he walked to the gas station to see if anyone had a phone there. I pulled my phone out and told her to make it quick, as I was about to go to bed. She thanked me and said it would only take 2 seconds. She took my phone and dialed a number and put the phone up to her ear. After a couple rings, whoever she called picked up and said, "Yeah, it's me, I'm borrowing somebody's phone." She stopped talking, and I can barely make out a man's voice on the other end. Now at this point, I started to feel uneasy. She was taking a lot longer to be done with the phone call, and I started to get impatient. The whole time, she just stood there staring at me with a wide-eyed expression and a creepy smile that looked forced, while the other person on the other end kept talking. She finally said, "Okay, bye," and handed me my phone back. She then said, "Do you think I might be able to come inside and use your bathroom?" I said no, and wished her good luck before shutting the front door. Right as I was about to walk away, I heard her laugh and say, "You made the right choice." I looked at the people, and she was still standing on my porch, but now she had a man standing next to her. He looked around her age and was wearing a hoodie and a face mask. They then started to circle around my house, banging on windows and laughing. I didn't hesitate to call 911 at this point. They stuck around for several more minutes trying to get in through my back door. They banged on my back door for about 5 minutes before they finally left. I watched them run up the street to the same black sedan I mentioned earlier and take off up the street. Cops showed up a few minutes later and took a report. They told me that I was the third person to call them that night, reporting a suspicious couple attempting to enter homes. I don't know what they had planned, but I'm inclined to believe there was nothing nice. Moral of the story is never answer the front door at 2 a.m., especially without looking to see who it is first. I learned my lesson that night. When I was 17, my bedroom had a window looking on my backyard. The backyard was fenced in, but on the other side of the fence were some woods and a retention pond. I'd never been scared of this, and kept the blinds open so that when the sun rose in the morning, the natural light would wake me up. One night, I was up late on my phone with my dog laying in the bed next to me around 2 a.m. My dog jumped up and started barking at the window. At first, I thought he was just barking as a reflection, and I told him to stop. But then I realized he was looking at the left side of the window while his reflection was on the right. I couldn't see outside the window because I had left the lamp on my nightstand on. All I could see in the window was a reflection of my bedroom. Not wanting to alert whatever might be out there that I was scared, I faked a yawn, set my phone aside, and turned off the lamp. I then lay down facing the window. I swear I saw a set of human eyes looking back at me from the side of the window. I drink a lot of water at night, so I had an empty water bottle on my nightstand. I grabbed it and pretended to realize it was just empty. I turned on the lamp and acted like I was going to get water. I went to my parents' room and my dad told me not to worry. We have these motion activated floodlights and they hadn't turned on, so there was no way anything was out there. I went back to my room and told myself I was just seeing things. I closed the blinds, turned on the lamp, and got some sleep. When I woke up in the morning, I went to take my dog out and decided to check the pine straw bedding underneath my window. It was visibly disturbed. I did my best to ignore that and remember what my dad said about the floodlights. That worked pretty well, until my dad tested the floodlights later that day and found out that the bulbs had been blown out. To this day, I keep my blinds closed and my lamp off when I sleep. I don't want to risk anything being able to see me, and if something is somehow peeking through my window, I want to know if it's there. If there was someone at my window that night, let's not meet. The story starts back in 2017 when my boyfriend and I started living together. Rent in our country has been really high for years, so after looking for a long time, we decided to immigrate. Our college was very close to the border between our home country and the neighboring country, and in that country, the rent was way lower. After a few months, we found an apartment. It used to be the old hay attic of a farm, but a rich couple, the landlord, turned the attic into an apartment years ago and turned the rest of the house into a home for themselves. We loved the place and signed the rental agreement and moved in September 2017. At first it was great. We liked our landlord and his wife, even though they were a bit eccentric, but after a while things became less comfortable. The landlord would blast loud music at all hours of the night. If we asked him to fix something, he would show up at 2 a.m. He constantly bragged about how he kicked out all the previous tenants after they told him the rent was just too high. When rats infested our roof/ceiling and created holes that went straight outside, he was expanding foam to kill them, trapping the rats in the process, which led them to dying and decomposing in the ceiling. And most importantly, he would knock on our door for minutes on end, and if we didn't answer, he would stand underneath our window and yell our names like he knew we were there, but ignoring him. Once, he even got into the apartment without permission. I got home and was sweaty as hell, so I walked straight into the bathroom, which was located on the left side of the entrance. When I came out wrapped in a towel and walked towards the living room, he suddenly came through the front door. I asked him what he was doing here, and he told me he left his key in the house after a visit, even though he used that key to get in. The last points finally clicked when we moved out. The landlord was about to move to Poland, and the new landlord was a dick, so we decided to move out. We told him about it, and he said, "Well, can you give me my camera then?" We thought he was joking, but after he left, he suddenly felt so weird about it, so we checked. The apartment had a very high pointed ceiling, so we had to use a ladder. But there, on the high horizontal beam, we found a small camera pointed at our living room. I think I still have the video somewhere of my boyfriend cutting the wire. All of a sudden, the cam network we saw on the Wi-Fi list on all of our phones was gone as well. We moved out and thought about pressing charges, but this man had a great lawyer and was long gone by then. I really do need to say, landlord, let's not meet.